Hello, everyone, and welcome to a brand new school year and a brand new season of Word on the Street. This is now our fifth season and our first episode of the season. So welcome back. Thank you for watching and listening in from our stuff last year and hopefully coming back again. So as you may or may not know, my name is Annissa. I am an SIE, she, her pronouns, SIE at the Rainbow Resource Center. And I'm here usually on the voice of the podcast, but I also have some other lovely voices. So I'm going to go ahead and give it off to my other SIEs to introduce themselves.
My name is Shray. I'm a fellow SIE. I use he, him pronouns.
Hi, I'm Nicole. I use she, her pronouns, and I also work at the RRC.
Hello, I'm also a fellow RRC worker, and my name is Kyara, and I use she, they pronouns.
Wait, I should add, I'm also in the RRC.
All right, perfect. And then if our guest from QPOCA would like to introduce themselves, please do so.
Yeah, hi everyone. My name is Sada. I am a senior and I am the co-chair and one of the founders for the QPOC Association, an association for queer people of color. Short name QPOCA or QPOCA, I don't know. Some people say different things. Oh, and I use he, they, and she pronouns I'm comfortable with. Yeah.
Hi everyone, I'm Juliana. I'm the events coordinator for QPOC Association. I'm from South Texas. I am a sophomore. I use she, her pronouns, and my major is public health.
All right. Thank you so much for everyone introducing yourselves. So the reason that we are doing this podcast, well, there's a lot of reasons we're doing this podcast, but one of the main reasons was that somebody last year had requested that we talk about sexuality and gender identity and discussing it with BIPOC parents and family members. So with National Coming Out Day looming around the corner from us, it's a few days away for when we're recording now and hopefully having it released either the day before or on that day. We'll see when I finish editing. But we just wanted to come in and share that person's story a little bit. They wrote in a little bit of dialogue, and then we're going to talk about our own experiences or any advice that we have to give for anybody. So this story comes from Chloe, she, her, and she shares, COVID was a time where I got to explore and learn about myself. Despite the bad and negative that COVID has brought, if it wasn't for COVID, I don't think I would have understood and found my sexuality. I used to be so sure that I was straight, but when you have the time with just yourself, you can learn a lot. After coming out as bisexual, as a femme-presenting woman of color, it's hard when people don't believe you or invalidate your sexuality. But honestly, I feel like my most authentic self and couldn't be happier, especially with my amazing girlfriend. So I have a lot to unpack with this because I feel like I have a very similar story to my own coming out, but I'm going to go ahead and pass it off to any of y'all, any reactions or personal things that you hear while hearing Chloe's story.
I mean, yay for you, Chloe. I'm so happy for you. Yeah, I think I came out at such a young age. So for me, in terms of coming out, I came out to my immediate family, like my parents and sister, when I was like 15. Like first year of high school, but in terms of my extended family, I actually haven't come out yet, which I think we're talking a little bit about today. But no, I'm not out yet to my extended family, but yeah, so I don't have a similar experience, but in terms of late in life with your immediate family, but I'm glad for you. Like, you know, any time is the best time for you. We're all.
I also do want to talk about exploring your sexuality during COVID because I have like pretty much the same thing. Before COVID, I was 100% sure that I'm straight. There's something to think about. Then when you had all those months where you were, with yourself, not that many people, life slowed down, I really started thinking. And during those like first several months of the pandemic was when I really thought something is up, something is different. And of course, at the end of that process, I realized I was gay. But yeah, I definitely had pretty much the exact same thing. COVID was definitely a time of exploration for myself, and time that I needed to unpack all of that, to unpack my sexuality with myself before I could tell others.
I just want to recognize the biphobia in her story. Yes, coming out to your family is very hard. Coming out to your friends is very hard, but it's when they say they accept you, but then tell you, oh, you probably just like girls, or oh, you're probably just confused. That's so harmful. I came out as pansexual or omnisexual, and I get it all the time. You're confused. Like, no, like it's one or the other. Like, you don't like, no. So I resonate with that experience. Even within the LGBTQ community, there are people who exclusively like one gender. And so sometimes even from within your community, you get that kind of, I guess, disbelief. And I just want to say you are not the only one, and your sexuality is valid despite what everyone else may think.
For me, though, when I think about it, when we use the word biphobia, I don't know if that's the term I would explicitly attribute to that, only because even if I think Chloe came out as lesbian, if they identified as a lesbian, it's an easy thing to say with your family, you're confused. I think that though, I initially came out as bisexual. I'm currently, in terms of COVID exploration, I'm currently judging whether or not I'm a lesbian. I'm not sure. But I initially, when I was 15, came out as bisexual. And I think that the biphobia is like more so from, okay, it's fine if you're bisexual, but we want you to end up with a man, that I think is a common thing to see from, especially, I don't know, at least when my family was first getting their bearings on this situation. They're supportive now. But yeah, there's that initial shock factor. Yeah.
I feel like I kind of have a lot to say with like everything, but back to like the COVID thing, I was gonna say, like, for me, for a long time, I thought that I was just bisexual, nothing else. And like with COVID, kind of the same thing, like it helped me like figure out who I really am. And that's when I started figuring out like, oh, I'm not just bisexual, I'm pansexual. And so like I would say like that time that I had to myself made me really figure out who I was, because even being bisexual, I just always felt like I still don't know like who I am, what I am, type of thing, and then like as for the biphobia part, it's so funny because like with me, I have a different experience because like I have a boyfriend, and like when I tell people that I'm pansexual, they're like, they don't really believe me because they're like, well, you have a boyfriend. And I'm like, do you not know what like pansexual means? Like, I don't, and nobody like believes me. It's so like weird. They're like, no, you just think girls are pretty or stuff like that. And, you have a boyfriend, you've been with him for a while, you're not actually pansexual. And it's just like so weird. Like, as a person who has a partner, and it's the opposite sex, like it's just weird like that people always like assume that. And then the last thing I wanted to say was like for the coming out part, I have personally like struggled with that. Like, I don't really know why I have either. And it's been like a really big struggle for me because like I haven't came out to my parents, and like my brother is gay and he came out to our parents like I think sophomore year of high school. And it's so weird because like my parents, they're very accepting and very welcoming to everything. And like whenever my brother came out, they were totally like okay with it, very chill. And it's just so weird because I can't do it, and I don't even know why. And so like it makes me think like I can't imagine what it's like for people who don't have parents that are like mine and they can't even come out. And it's just crazy. And I think it's because there's like a very big stigma to coming out. And I think that's why I'm just so nervous about it. But I don't know. I think it's crazy that I still can't even do it, even knowing like who my parents are, you know?
I think when it comes to, thank you for sharing that. I think something that I've kind of somewhat with a close person to me who just recently came out to their family. When it comes to like AFAB people and, you know, femme people coming out is with their specifically their fathers. When you think about it, for them, like typically, you know, cis men kind of grow up thinking of lesbianism and thinking of women loving women relationships as something that's, you know, still rooted, like we're getting to that misogyny, we're still rooted in, you know, attraction for men. And that's something that's like, as we see, you know, pleasuring to men, like they like each other because it's visually stimulating for the man to see. And thinking about like your daughter in that context, like it's not to them a sexual orientation, it's a fetishization. And so applying that to your daughter, it can be really tricky to wrap your head around, which is why I think that like I once got like something to me, a guy said to me like, oh, but like homophobia towards like women, it's not like that bad, is it? Like, because I think to them they kind of just, we don't even have to talk about the violence aspect, like corrective rape and things like that, but from a violence standpoint they don't see it as much towards women, and so yeah, totally there's that fear. Yeah, so thank you for sharing that. You said something earlier, I was going to say something too, I forgot. Sorry.
No, we could totally wrap back around if it comes back into your head. But I was going to share part of what Chloe had said in her story, and then what was brought up in conversation right now. I also did a lot of self-exploration during COVID. I had never like really, I had told people that I was straight, but one, nobody believed me. Like my close group of friends. I think this is important to share, is that I'm a graduate student here. So I did my undergraduate at CSU Monterey Bay, and I was friends with a lot of people and very involved with queer issues there, but I was just there as an ally. But so all my friends were like, okay, yeah, we know if anything you're bi, and it turned out I actually am pansexual, and that's how I still identify now. But it took me being by myself during COVID to actually like resonate and like really find the word for what I was feeling, because I had heard bi so many times, but I was like, I feel that that's right, but there's just, it's not the exact label that I want. And for whatever reason that could be, I think a lot of that also plays into the fetishization and sexualization of sapphic love and romantic relationships in that sense. But two, I also wanted to speak to the invalidation of bisexuality. So when I actually came out to my family, I come from a mixed family. My mom is Portuguese and my dad is Mexican. Came out to my mom's reaction was more or less like, yeah, I know that. But I was like, okay, it took me 22 years to get here. So can you like just be a little more happy? Can you not just like throw it in my face? Because I hate that. But I was really, really scared to come out to my dad specifically because growing up, he had a very like machismo-esque attitude. So there was a lot of like, I heard the F slurs thrown around so often in my house, like he didn't even think about like what he was saying. And actually, I'm a part of the grad program. I am also in the LGBT plus emphasis for counseling. So I'm aiming to be a queer therapist and serve the queer and BIPOC community. But we were talking about recently how with invalidation to bisexuality, pansexuality, and omnisexuality, like in that sphere, how much our fathers actually do play a role into that because of the fetishization that was discussed, but as well as the fact that specifically the experience to come out in a BIPOC setting. For my background, it was coming out in a Mexican household, was rooted in a lot of the homophobia and transphobia that is elicited in those communities. It comes from fear because you're already in a cis white society. So there's an extra layer of fear that I'm like, oh, I'm worried for you, or at least that's the excuse that is given. However, I want to reiterate, because this was said earlier, it is any time that you come out is the perfect time. If you never come out, you're still valid. No matter what your identity is, no matter what partner you have at the time, which, okay, that's where I was going with that. I came out to my mom. She said, yeah, I know. But then she kind of like overcorrected and was like, okay, I think you should date this girl. I think you should be with this girl. And completely like 180'd and went over and was like, okay, you're a lesbian. And that's how my mom also still refers to me. And I was like, no. So then earlier in the year when I was like, oh, I've been seeing this guy, and she like looked at me, she was like, oh, so that was just a phase. And I was like, no. Pansexual, mom. Pan. There anybody, everybody. And so like, yeah. So I just wanted to reiterate those points because that was a lot of my story as well.
Something to like the bisexual listeners, or something I think that's like important to provide in terms of context when which sucks having to explain bisexuality, and I say that as an umbrella term for pansexuality, omnisexuality, everything. How like when you think about it, the amount of queer people that exist versus the amount of like straight men that exist when you're thinking about it from women's perspective, a bisexual woman's perspective, yeah, there's significantly more straight men to choose from, just in terms of who you have access to. So it makes perfect sense for someone who's bisexual to end up with, men, like depending on like what community you surround yourself with. But yeah.
And one more thing I also want to add to was you talked about when you would come out, like how when you like came out to your mom and all that, she was like, yeah, I know. Verbatim, same thing happened with my mom. Like literally when I came out, she's like, yeah, I kind of knew. And I'm like, Mom, that's not what I want to hear. Like, like maybe you could say that later, but when I just come out to you, I had to spend, I mean, from the time I came out to myself to the time I came out to my mom, dad, and brother, and came out to everyone else, that was a full year. I went having to get the courage and get it together to do it. And it's the first thing you say. I was like, they could have just said, thanks for sharing that. And like, I'll be supportive. And like maybe say those for saying, yeah, I already knew. Like, that's just one thing you mentioned earlier. I really want to bring up because that really did bug me, especially when it's like I did all of this and it felt like I was making and it just like, for me, it felt like I made a big deal for what? And it was also just, I was expecting something different, a better answer.
I think that is like what I'm most afraid of, which is like so weird, is I'm afraid of that response. So I'd rather just be like, okay, I just won't say anything because I don't want that response, yeah.
I think though, like, obviously the thing is we're talking about this at a college level, like we're all, depending on how dependent it's all very different for all of us, but how dependent you are on your family. I think that there's a certain vulnerability and like stage in your life that comes with being out to your parents, and it's like until you pass that, it's hard to be in queer relationships, just period. Like my girlfriend just recently came out to her parents, And you know, before that, it is hard on the relationship when you're dating somebody who's not out to their parents, because there's this block, and there's an emotional maturity that comes with being out to your parents, and there's a lack of openness when you're not out to your parents in terms of what you can provide your significant other with. So it's like I don't want to say I push or like I tell people like come out to your parents, because it's all obviously very dependent on what your situation is. But I say it's better. I say it's better to, one, know who your true family is. I'm a big, speaker towards chosen family and things like that, which is like, if we're talking about this in the BIPOC context, it's already so difficult, because like when you're thinking from like a marginalized like person's perspective, with being a person of color and being of like a marginalized ethnicity, that family, that person, those people who share that experience with you from day one, they might not be the people who, it's already so small, and then they're not the people maybe who can provide you that family aspect in terms of queer identity, which is why we have QPOCA, by the way, so come join. But even so, I'm a big proponent of chosen family, and I think that it's just important to be out in your family if you're ever going to reach, certain levels in your life. It's just, I can say that for me, it's better. That's why I keep pushing off being out to my extended family, because I know that some people are not going to like it. Like I like the whispers and things like that of towards gay people, and things like that growing up with my extended family. But I know that once you're out, it's just like it's out there. Like I'm the person that I am. Nothing's changing that. People can choose whether or not they're going to be in your life. And you can be vulnerable like the people that you love. Yeah. I'm not trying to push you, Juliana. I'm just trying to give you the words of encouragement that it might help your life.
Yeah, and I kind of want to speak to that as well, because I realized when I was talking about my coming out story, I actually didn't go into like my father's reaction. So yeah, he was Mexican man. I was scared of because of his homophobia, because of the household he grew up in too. It was riddled with Catholic and Christian evangelical beliefs and all that stuff. But I was so scared to tell him. I told my mom first, and I was like, I'm not going to tell my dad. The first person I actually did come out to was my best friend. And okay, Juliana, thank you so much for joining. I know you have to go to class right now, but I just wanted to say thank you again for joining, and
Thank you so much.
again.
I'm
Yeah.
so sorry.
No, you're good. But thank you
Okay.
again for joining and for your story and your shares as well.
Okay, bye. Have a good day, y'all.
Bye. But yeah, I was so afraid to come out to him, because there was a genuine fear that he may react with not violence, but with disappointment. And I was like, okay, so I'm not going to tell him for a while. I came out to my mom on Mother's Day. I came out through a card, and that's where she was like, okay, whatever. And then I finally was like, you know what? My sister was just like, I think dad would understand. And like, I know that my dad like loves me and things like that, but there was still that fear that was looming over, like, how would he view me now? We already don't have the most intimate relationship as far as like our closeness at the time. And so finally that day, later that night, after also everyone had been drinking, I go and I just show my dad the card, and I look at him, and I'm sitting there crying, shaking. And he looks up and he starts to cry too. And he just gives me the biggest hug. And he's like, I'm so sorry that it took you so long. I'm sorry that you felt that way. And then my mom came in and pushed him out of the way and was like, I need water, because we're standing in front of the sink. So my mom killed that like moment with my dad. But because they reacted to the way that they did, I was like, I feel better as a person. I feel like that I'm more comfortable. And so I took that point, and that's where I was like, I can come out to my extended family. However, they took it a lot worse. And so like that fear of extended family and them talking, especially because they don't see you every single day, is very valid and very real, and something that I personally went through. Like whether or not they were outwardly speaking of their disapproval, or they were just talking amongst themselves and being like, okay, we don't want Annissa here anymore, or we just want to step away from her because she's too. Also, a lot of my family is super Republican, and it's really gross and annoying and conservative. So there was a lot of pain that then where I was in a good place, and then a lot of pain that followed. But now 2 years later, I think they all just either one forgot or just don't really, it's not as big as a deal anymore because I've been very vocal, and I know that they have noticed a change in me because of me finally feeling free to be my authentic self, or however else anybody wants to describe that. They're like, you look happier, because I was the child that was always crying and always upset. They're like, you actually smile now, and that's amazing. So yeah, just another little perspective of outer family, because I think that is where a lot of the struggle comes from as well, is like those extended family members, and what are they going to think, because they're not around you all the time.
Yeah, well, some of us families of color, like there's just so many of them, isn't there? Like my mom is the oldest of 9. And I think with us, you know, BIPOC, and with us families of color, there's when you're first gen, I'm a first gen American. I come from like an immigrant family. There's one like a pressure to validate the sacrifices that your parents made to put you like as a child like where you are, and it almost feels like when you do anything outside of like the perfect child, like, you know, a slap in the face to what they did for you to be able to be where you're sat. I think that's something my mom would never admit, but the way that like I discuss it with her and she goes about like conversations with me is, she says like I believe my mom's just a worrier. She says she's just scared that I keep making my life harder than it needs to be. Like, 1, I'm a person of color. 2, I'm femme presenting. 3, I came out as bisexual. 4, now I think I'm a lesbian, and you know, and then 5, I'm dating somebody who's, you know, masked, which makes people confused as to like, well, there's a whole other conversation we could have of like, why are you, you know, dating a girl if they're masked? You know, like, what's the point? Why not date a man? And so she just keeps getting scared for me to keep adding challenges to my life. And I think that when you're coming from a BIPOC perspective, your life is already so like freaking there's already so much to deal with. And so not only adding a difficulty to that, but lessening the amount of people that you get to have in your life, because we can't think of it as like in terms of our marginalized like identities as like additive, in that like, well, in regards to my BIPOC experience and in regards to that community aspect that I need, I'll hang out here for that, and then for the queer community I'll hang out here for that. No, because within those community it's that you have that reason for needing the other community, you know. So like within like, you know, the queer community, like within like a bunch of white people, I need my BIPOC community, and within the BIPOC community I need my queer community, you know. Like it's an intersectional, we have to think of ourselves as like it's a holistic identity describing all of who we are. So limiting the amount of people who essentially get to be in your life, yeah, that's that.
Hey y'all, it's Annissa here.
taking a little break from the conversation that we're having in the podcast to let you know about a little bit of things that we have coming on in the next coming weeks. First, I would like to talk about QPOCA, and who actually is a guest today on our podcast episode. They have general meetings every Thursday from 5:35 to 6:35 p.m. in the Chappelle Lounge. And if you want, you can go ahead and give them a follow on Instagram at QPOCA_SCU. That's at QPOCA_SCU. Also on the docket, the OML and RRC would like to welcome you to join our event called A Night in Latin America. This is going to be happening October 15th from 7 to 9 p.m. in Locatelli Center, where we will be instructing dance, celebrating Latinx heritage. It's a very awesome event. Please come out if you can. Once again, that's October 15th, 7 to 9 p.m. at the Locatelli Center. From the RRC specifically, and from me, of course, we have a weekly event called Queer Craft Corner happening every Friday from 11:30 a.m. to 1:30 p.m. You could find us at the OML House, aka 832 Market Street, where we come by, make different crafts. On October 14th, we will be making crochet beanies, so please come out and join us. We would love to have you there. Continuing on with more things from Queer Craft Corner, we will also be hosting a button design workshop with Central Valley artist Riley Jane. That is going to be happening Friday, October 21st from 11:30 a.m. to 1:30 p.m. at the OML House. If you can, follow the link below and register for your own art supplies and to get some artwork from Riley Jane. That'll be another thing that we would love to have you come and join us for. So please come check us out and come join us for that event as well. And last but certainly not least, the Rainbow Resource Center presents Queer Horror Night. On Saturday, October 29th, we will be viewing the movie Rift from 2017. The movie begins at 7 p.m. in the Williman Room. RSVP if you can, that will also be linked below. Movie will begin at 7, like I said. Snacks and drinks will also be provided. Come and hang out and enjoy a lovely queer horror film. And with that, let's go ahead and get back to the episode.
So I just want to speak upon a point that you made, that like your mom being like worried about you for like adding on to your already person of color identity. I struggled with that like internally. Like I didn't have no one really, because I was for a long time, I really was looking, especially during COVID, like trying to figure myself out like you all were. And for the longest time, I was thinking like, if I really am committed to like discovering who I am, I'm like essentially making things worse for myself and isolating myself even more. And that really put me in a stuck place for a while. But I don't know, I think kind of just being here and being like surrounded by more people of color, especially queer people of color, have really helped me like feel a bit better about myself, that I am not alone. For a long time, I did feel that I was alone because I went to school and I hardly saw people like me, or people, if they were like me, no one was openly talking about these things. So I really felt like alone in this whole situation. But the fact that I'm here at Santa Clara and there are clubs for people who look like me and clubs for queer people, I now feel a bit more seen, and I'm glad that we have these clubs here. So we have like a small community to like just talk to and just vent to each other and be able to support each other, because especially being here at Santa Clara, because being here is a lot with all people that don't look like us. So I'm glad we have our little spaces to ourselves, because it's these moments and these clubs that really help us like build up for each other.
I mean, yeah, these are the reasons why me and my partner, my co-chair, started QPOCA, is conversations and needs like this, because we didn't have anything like this. We had TLC, which like tried, but specifically this like need for having a designated space for that, and for one, never feeling like, the thing is, like, I think we all can say, like, whenever you're in a space that is not familiar to you, familiar as in like you don't see yourself in the people around you. There's, you know, and there's like a sense of like uneasiness and caution, like having your walls up, and like having a space where that's like not necessary. That's like why we started QPOCA. But yeah, thank you for sharing that.
And one more thing I want to add too is like you're adding on to having these spaces for us. It is definitely very nice because I have, you know, same thing, Kyara, is, you know, in high school and like back before college, there weren't really any queer clubs or anything like that. I mean, a queer club in Dallas, that would have not gone well. Yeah, yeah, it really would have gone well. And it's nice that, you know, we have an office for it, Rainbow Resource Center. We have clubs, you know, dedicated to it. And of course, SU does have its own issues, its own history, but still it definitely is very nice to have. And actually I want to add one more thing too, is that with having like an official office and everything, not all universities have that. Like I have a friend who goes to a university in the South. Okay, then University of Oklahoma. So they do have like an office for this kind of thing, like the Rainbow Resource Center, but no one is allowed to get paid. It has to be all volunteer work. No, the board of trustees or regents, whoever, said that this wasn't, you know, they weren't allowed to have this as paid work. Their whole like RRC equivalent all had to be volunteer, no one getting paid. So it's definitely good that we are at this, you know, level. We get paid for the work we do. We have like funding and resources, but of course we could always use it more.
I will
Yeah.
say though, on that point, to be fair, like when we have, the thing is, the Multicultural Center is similar to the Office of Multicultural Learning, except it's entirely student run. And like barely any, like when I think about what makes SCU, what an SCU like provides the community to me, I think of the Multicultural Center. And maybe that's because that's primarily where a lot of my like work is, and you know, clubs that I've started on this campus. But when it comes to the people who make SCU a community for me, it's the students, because the students, they genuinely care here. And that's why the MCC is like what it is. And the MCC, like last year, I think was the first time that MCC staff, which is the same as like all y'all's positions, was paid. And that wasn't like on an hourly basis, that was on a stipend basis. And that was, we get this stipend, we were told that it would be a little over 800 for each quarter. But literally after I was on staff last year, literally after you know, the quarter, we were told, oh no, it's not for the quarter, it's for the year. And so I was getting 800 for the year, but I was working almost 10-hour weeks, so that's like a fifth of the minimum wage for me, for my job in the Multicultural Center. Part of why I didn't return, even though they're getting paid hourly now this year, but they're getting paid hourly not as an additive like how the center assistants are getting paid. They're getting paid out of the center student involvement's budget. Multicultural Center staff is getting paid out of the Multicultural Center's budget. So the budget that's supposed to be going to like culture shows and things like that is getting used to pay the staff who run the center like any other center, like the Office of Multicultural Learning and the Center for Student Involvement and da. So I will say to that, we still have some presence of that energy going on over here. Not a lot of, in terms of like BIPOC, we do not have a lot of support. But that's why we're growing in numbers. That's why that's why I just started 2 clubs, African Student Association and Queer People of Color Association. Because when we're growing more and more numbers, it's harder for admin to, we're allowed to talk about admin, yeah. It's harder for admin to say no. So yeah, still a presence of that, unfortunately.
Thanks for sharing that. I did not know that it was stipend last year, and they did that switching around. Is that illegal? Like switching it around like that?
Technically, when you do things on a stipend basis, you can, because it's a stipend basis, pay below the minimum wage because you're not recording hours, and the amount of hours I work is subject to like discussion, like, oh, they didn't work that amount of hours. But now I was working, everybody on staff was working, and now everybody on the staff feels like they can't work the amount of hours that the MCC needs because they don't want to take money out of the budget. And so we have just a center that needs people working like the appropriate and necessary amount of hours, but they literally can't, or they don't report it because they don't want to take that money out of our budget. So even though we were promised that it would be not paid out of our budget, but yeah.
It's definitely good then to get the word out about these things, because I mean, if people know and if people complain, they can only ignore, as Sarah said, they can only ignore us for so long. But it's definitely good to know that this is what's happening in the MCC. What happened last year in the MCC staff, and what's happening now this year.
That's also why, you know, we wanted to have a faction of the Multicultural Center focused towards queer voices, because we wanted also like a vote in like what the Multicultural Center looks like to be voiced by like queer people of color, because we're such a minority in each individual club. This way, like our voices in terms of what the MCC looks like cannot be ignored. So I implore you all, I don't know if that's the right word, I push you all to come join us. We meet, this is coming out on Tuesday, so we meet on Thursday, so come this Thursday. Yeah. I'm
noticing that we have just maybe about 15 to 20 minutes left. And I think it was really important that we talked about one, representation on campus, and what places you can go to, such as QPOCA, and like being that voice. And I also want to speak to and elaborate more on chosen family, and then also ask if anybody who has come out to not even extended family, but their immediate families, what tips do you have for somebody who is struggling with that, or any tips for what you should do prior to that, or make sure that you have after you come out. So if anybody wants to hit any of those topics, go ahead, feel free, and then I'll chime in as we go.
Yeah, so I think that one of the great things about a club like QPOCA is for those people that are struggling to come out, finding your chosen family before coming out to your like biological family is setting a support system for in case it goes bad. Like that alleviates some of the worry. You're like, if this does go bad, because we're all very privileged that like they say, oh, I know. That's a very privileged stance, because some people really do get like cut off from their support systems. So I think that going to a place like QPOC or just finding chosen family can help you in that coming out process. I also am a huge fan of like informal coming out. Like, oh, I'm talking to this girl. Like, oh, like, or just like bring them home. Like, I mean, that might not be the right decision if you think it's going to go poorly, but
I think it's best.
yeah. But it doesn't have to be like, okay, sit down, I have something to tell you. I think informal coming out is a great tool.
I agree. I tried to do the thing is, for mine, when it comes to coming out, the only people I have formally come out to and would ever formally come out to is my immediate family when I was like 15 years old. And then my extended family, specifically the ones on my mom's side, because they all have young children. And I hate this discussion. But, you know, thinking about like the way that my family is structured, it's that for some parents, and I'm not going to freaking argue about it, because like with these specific parents, you know, like my relationship is different with each individual, like auntie and uncle. I just don't feel comfortable coming out to one and then not the other. But like they would want to discuss homosexuality and queerness, at their own pace with their children. And for that reason, I would do formally coming out and say, okay, this is not something I'm comfortable like hiding from, because I essentially hide it from the kids because I'm the oldest of all of them. And this is not something that I'm really comfortable hiding anymore because it's getting annoying. Like, truthfully, it's getting annoying because I don't know, like your little cousins look up to you and want to know all about your life, and this is a huge part of my life that I don't get to share. So yeah, I said I'm not comfortable sharing, like, keeping it from the cousins that much anymore, so y'all can decide how much you would like to be in my life. I'm just gonna keep going how I like to do, going to family events and things like that. If you don't want your cousin, like your kid, if you don't want your kid like around me or me talking to your kid about it, that's a you decision, not me. But that's a conversation in order for it to go down okay, and to avoid as much drama as possible, I would formally come out for it. And that's, like, I guess the advice I would give for everybody who has a similar situation going on. But for everyone else, like, this is funny. Like for like my mom's and my mom and dad's like family friends and like everybody else, it's informal. Every single one of them, I came out to them just saying, oh yeah, this is my girlfriend. Do you want to see a picture of us like at Christmas in the park? Like that was last year. That type of thing.
And talking about the informal coming out too, it did definitely help a bit because for my parents it's formal. My brother, it was informal. Like I don't know, he just mentioned something, and then I just like came out, and he's like, "Wait, what? Wait, really? Okay," and all that. And a little push from my mom too, because I did need that push because I was like, "Come on now, help me," because I was procrastinating. That's something too. Is try not to procrastinate on coming out. Because I mean, and of course, don't get me wrong, it's very daunting, all of that. And it does really take a lot of courage and a lot of thought before you actually do it. But don't try to procrastinate. Try to give yourself like a due date. I mean, at least for that, my personal advice was giving myself like a bit of a due date, like do it by this time or it's not going to happen. And also one thing for me is I wanted to tell my immediate family in person. So for me, it was like if I don't tell my brother, it was last Christmas break. If I don't tell him on Christmas break, next time will be spring break when I come back, if he's in town during the same time, or it'll be during the summer. So it was like, I had to like give myself a bit of a due date. And also talking about coming out to the extended family. I don't know, again, everybody's situation is different, but for me, it's definitely if I come out to one, in a ways I had to come out to all of them because I don't know how much they chat, but in Indian circles, they can be very, very, very chatty and nosy. We all know the one auntie. We all know the one auntie is gonna tell everyone. Like you tell her, half of India will know, and all the family in the US will know. So you definitely do have to think, okay, if I tell someone, could this get out? And before I know it, everyone I know knows.
Yeah, I haven't come out to my extended family. I keep telling my mom, I will tell y'all as like advice, talk to your parents first about coming out to the extended family because they might have preferences. Like something my mom wanted was she herself wanted to tell my grandmother and grandfather, her parents, because that's the conversation she wants to have with them because like Ethiopians. I mean, like it's tricky because like in Ethiopia, like they're all like born and raised over there, and over there it's like can be punishable by like death being gay. So it's like a it would be a shock. It would also be a shock because I don't come off as gay, I guess. My girlfriend even said, I didn't know you were gay when I first met you. I was like, okay, sure, okay. But yeah, it's definitely a shock. So talk to your parents about it because they might have some preferences with how it's done. And as much as like I know people will be like, oh, it shouldn't be this way. Oh, it shouldn't be this way. No, it shouldn't, but it is. That's the way it is. You just gotta accept the situation for what it is and do what has the minimum amount of damage to your relationships with your family, because I know people want to get on this, like, if your family's toxic, if your family doesn't agree with you on this, and this, cut them off. And it's so much easier said than done in BIPOC circles and in BIPOC families, because of like our point from earlier. I feel like where it's like we already have such a limited community. Like, am I supposed to like this is like my family, and like, even though I know that some of them like won't see face to face to me and won't accept me holistically for who I am, like there's still the people who like wiped my ass when I was a little kid, and bailed my mom and dad out of like really, you know, terrible like situations, like helped out a lot with raising me, and like things like that. Like, and I don't know, like in a lot of BIPOC cultures, that's just not what you do to family. Like, you know, like if family, I mean, I feel like personally, like y'all can like check me on this, family means so much more in like BIPOC communities, because like think about just the way that like our families work. And like I was talking to my friends about this earlier, it's like I think it's like more common for like in like white families, frankly, like putting your parents in homes and like doing this and that. It's just not something it's just not something we do, you know, like the way that like you regard family in BIPOC communities, it's just different. So I personally, like, I care a lot about, you know, maintaining those relationships. And there's a difference between cutting out people who are making it hard for me to like exist in my own skin, and people who are just like, okay, like let's like we can just keep it to ourselves. Like, you know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
So yeah.
And
Go ahead, Shray.
and one thing too about, you know, potentially toxic family, cutting them off, you know, of course, is, you know, again, people said the whole thing like cutting off, you know, if they don't like you, cut them off. But also it's just like at the end of the day, you know, that is your mother, that's your father, it's your brother, it's your sister, that's your family, and it's going to hurt if they don't approve of you. Like if I was, you know, if I was in a situation where my family didn't approve of me, I would be very, very hurt. You know, it's definitely not just, you know, if it, you know, we have to consider that like I was gonna say, I have to consider that like it can hurt a lot if they don't approve of you. And also I do want to touch on the whole, you know, the family dynamics. I will say it's definitely, of course, I want to speak for all BIPOC communities, but I will say I do see kind of the whole thing of like family meeting a lot. Like for example, like in Indian families, like, you know, everyone may be in everyone's business, but that's what everyone's in everyone's business. Everyone's looking out for each other. If someone in the family is not doing well, you know, it's like everybody comes and helps. So you don't need to ask for help. They'll just come help you because it's your family. And I mean, that's definitely, if you were to lose that support structure, the support structure wasn't as strong as it was before, it can be very hard to go on without it, especially if it's among people, you know, like your parents or your brother or sister. That could be a very hard loss that you'll grieve if you were to lose it.
I think it goes back to, I'm sorry, I forgot your name in the yellow shirt, what you were saying. Nicole, sorry? Nicole. I think it goes back to what you're saying about like when you come out, like having that support system already in place with like a chosen family. Because you do need to be prepared for like losing your family, or at least losing them in the capacity that they currently act in. Like they could be the people that you see like every now and then, sure. It's like changing a relationship. So having that support system in place is important before you come out. Yeah, I definitely agree with that.
Yeah, it is. I think that was like one of the most perfect, like, if there is a perfect tip for anybody, is making sure you have that safety net of a person who's going to affirm you and going to accept you. That is why I came out to my friends first.
Mm-hmm.
And I also think it's really important, because this was something I didn't do, was having that conversation with your parents and being like, hey, how do you want to go about this for like telling like grandma or whoever in the family? Because I told my parents I came out on social media, and I purposely came out on social media because there were certain family members that didn't have me on there. But then my mom is the talker and immediately went and outed me to her parents. And that my grandfather is super Trumpy, and it was so uncomfortable, and I felt like I was betrayed in that situation. But if it was just a lack of communication, and now she knows like, oh, I didn't even realize and didn't think twice about doing so because you were out and you look so happy, and I just wanted I wanted everyone to know how happy you were. But other than that, is there anything else that anyone wants to add before we close up?
I guess just pro tip for like your friends coming out, everybody, is like, don't ever assume that your friend is out to everyone ever, unless they explicitly say so. Like somebody can be out in one setting and not the other. So like when you like jump like to a certain area and you say, oh, my friend who's this, like where you're currently speaking, they may not be out in that specific area. So just always assume that your friend is not out, even if they're out to you, even if they're out to seemingly like everyone in your circle. Don't offer that information to people. Let them do that for themselves. I would say, like, if you're trying to support your friends and their journey, you don't even think about it. Sometimes you feel like, outing somebody would be like, oh, this person's that, to somebody who like wouldn't know. It's not as overt as that all the time. It's simply even something as simple as like offering somebody else their pronouns. Let them give that information to other people. So yeah.
I also just wanted to add, you don't have to come out to everybody.
Mhm.
Like, it's not necessary that every single person you encounter on a regular basis knows your sexuality, your gender identity, whatever. That's not that important, especially if it's going to compromise your safety and your sanity. I wear your sexuality with pride, but also like, that's not something you have to do if it's going to make you uncomfortable in every space. So
No, it's definitely one thing. There's definitely one thing is, at the end of the day, your safety and health take priority. If coming out could put that at risk, then don't do it. Because you don't want to be in a situation where your safety is in jeopardy. And also one more thing too about coming out is, something y'all may have heard this on whoever's listening, is that it is a recurring thing. It's like an endless thing, because we do live in a society where the assumption is that you're cis and het. So as you meet new people in your life, you will likely have to come out to them, as exhausting as it is.
Yeah, but don't feel like you owe a formal coming out like to everybody. Like, if for you the style of informal coming out, as you put it, I like that terminology. I've never heard that before. Of just like, oh yeah, like this is just like just talking how you would if you were in, like, say, like a man and had like a girlfriend, like talking how any cis het person would talk about that, by just saying, oh, my boyfriend, like if just going about how you would usually talk. If that works for you, do that. Like, that's fine. You don't owe everybody a formal coming out. Yeah. Or you don't owe anybody anything.
And I'm a big fan of informal coming out. I've never like came out formally. I'm always just like, yeah, we don't need to discuss anything, but that's what's up with me. So
Here you go. Do with that what you will.
That uncomfortable conversation, just blow right by it. Yep. Now you know.
Speed through it. All right. Well, we are coming to a close on our time and like how much we have. I want to say thank you to everybody who joined us, who's here and who has left already, for sharing. So feeling so safe to share your own identity and your own story along with this, and also giving advice to the people that have been looking for this information. To close out, if there's anything that we have in the next coming weeks from anybody here that you want to talk about a little bit more, pitch it, and put it out there so that we can continue to lift our voices and share what's going on in our communities.
I'm gonna go look at the MCC calendar. I will say for QPOCA meetings, we meet every Thursday from 5:35 to 6:35 in Chappelle. That is the multicultural center, the lounge in there. So come by. It's right outside Benson. Super, super fun. This week, which you guys are gonna miss if you don't come. This is being recorded on a Wednesday. But tomorrow we're having like pancakes and Play-Doh. So I can't say come to that. That's like the type of thing we did last week. We had like bingo, where essentially you had to find a person who was wearing white shoes or who's from Texas, like just trying to like icebreaker shit. So yeah, we have some other fun things coming up that are not finalized because we are a very new club. We literally just became a registered student organization last spring. But we have ideas for things like QPOCalypse, and other like cool things that like we're hoping will be really fun. We're looking for a first-year representative. We're two first-year representatives. We're looking for some extra culture show coordinators, and event coordinators and PR coordinators. The more the merrier on our team. We need people, we need bodies, because we're so new. We need not only as many ideas as possible, but as much help as possible. So please not only come to the meetings, but like be open to come and join board. It'd be fun. But as for MCC as a whole, I can't think of anything as of now. Oh, but for my play, can I plug that? I'm actually directing a play this quarter. So this will be coming out Tuesday of week 4, National Coming Out Day. The following week, week 5, the October 22nd and 23rd, will be the opening and closing. It's a one weekend only, of a play I'm directing, Poof by Lynn Nottage, who is a 2-time Pulitzer Prize winning Black female playwright. Super, super amazing demonstration of, Black female friendships, and Black womanhood. Beautiful play. It's a hilarious comedy about a woman with an abusive husband. It's funny, I promise. It's funny. It should be interesting. We have one person who's casted, who's an experienced actor, and one person who's never acted a day in her life. So it's been a fun time directing. So definitely come check it out. And then for the queer folks, my friend Lucas Simone is directing a queer play. So come check that out as well. It's the same show. Yeah. October 22nd, 23rd. I was just gonna say it. October 22nd, 23rd, end of week 5.
The Rainbow Resource Center on October 29th is hosting a queer horror movie night. We'll be watching Rift. Currently, the location is not set yet. It's pending. But October 29th, look out for the flyers.
And then I will also use this time to plug myself. Rainbow Resource Center also has a weekly program that I run called Queer Craft Corner. It's a space on every Friday from 11:30 to 1 p.m. at the OML house. We just have different crafts set up for people to come talk, share some cheese just come talk, share yourself. And okay, sure, I will see you later. Thank you for joining. Yes, Queer Craft Corner, 11:30 to 1:30 p.m. at the OML house, different crafts going on. This will come out afterwards, but for example, this Friday we're going to be making embroidered paintings. So if any of y'all in the chat or want to come, making beautiful paintings together, and then also just hanging out, listening to music, having snacks and all that stuff. And then on October 21st, we're going to do something new with Queer Craft Corner, which I am calling our guest artist spotlight. We're going to have Riley Jane from the Central Valley come in and have a button design workshop where she'll teach you how she makes her buttons and her pins. And also if you register now, because there's an RSVP form that I will also link, you will get some of her artwork for free because we're already going to buy it from her. So if that's something you're interested, please come out and look for those flyers as well. Anything else before we wrap up for good? No? Okay. Well, this has been another successful episode of Word on the Street and OML and RRC Podcast. Thank you, everybody, for joining, and thank you, everybody, for listening. Look out for us again in the near future. All right. Bye, y'all.